Matthew Pennycook, the Minister of State at the Department for Housing, joins us. So very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Do you have any updates on the boat collision from the government in terms of what can be done to limit the damage, and as well with the one missing person still not found?
Let me say in the first instance, obviously, it's a fast-evolving situation. Our thoughts are with all those affected, particularly the family of the missing crew member, and our thanks obviously go to the Coast Guard, the RNLI and the emergency services for their work in responding. An investigation is taking place, but US and Portuguese authorities are the flag states for the vessels involved. The UK is obviously assisting in that investigation. And in terms of the ongoing work to ensure any potential impact on water pollution in the environment, that work is underway, but it's a particularly fast-moving situation. The fire is still raging. We don't think air quality in the area has breached dangerous limits. As I say, it's obviously a very dynamic situation.
I wanted to get your quick reaction as well to the British tourist, Rebecca Burke, who's been detained in the US for 10 days now for what appears like, while on a tourist visa, only doing some housework. We're speaking to her father in the next hour. Is the government working with the US to try and secure her release and return to the UK?
So I'm limited in what I can say on this case, but we are aware of that UK national who's been detained in the United States. We're providing support. We're in contact with the local authorities in the area, but that's about all I can say at this stage on that particular case.
Is it more important to maintain good relations with Donald Trump?
I don't think that's an issue in this particular case. I think the individual is detained for very specific reasons. We're providing support to them and are in contact with the local authorities in the area.
Today we get to the point where the planning bill is published, and we'll get to see all of the details of it. And there's obviously still a relatively long way to go. I noticed the title of your press release is the biggest building boom in a generation. When will that actually begin? This year? Next year? Will it take 2 years before the effects of this bill actually take effect?
Well, it's already begun in the sense that in our first 8 months in office, we've undertaken perhaps the biggest overhaul of the planning system in a generation. We've already overhauled the National Planning Policy Framework within our first 6 months to ensure it's pro-growth, pro-housing supply to meet that Plan for Change milestone of 1.5 million new homes across the Parliament. The Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which we're introducing today, which will be transformative, it's a flagship bill. It will help speed up and streamline the delivery of new homes and critical infrastructure. But it's just the latest step in that reform programme, and there'll be more to come after this legislation. This is a whole-of-Parliament mission to get the country building again, to get the homes and the infrastructure we need in every part of the United Kingdom.
Obviously, I can't read the text of the bill yet because you haven't published it, but we'll get a chance to do that later today. Scanning through your press release and the sort of subtitles, compulsory purchase reform and development corporations really jump out, and what you're saying about those. You also just said it will be transformative. So for our viewers at home and having not read the full bill yet, I mean, put that in context for us. Are you sort of saying that if it's a big, national, important infrastructure house building project, that nothing will be able to get in its way? If this had been passed before HS2, would the idea of a bat tunnel be far in the distance?
We can speak about the bat tunnel specifically if you like to. I think there are three main things the bill's trying to do. It's firstly going to introduce a more certain and faster consenting process for nationally significant infrastructure projects, so that big, major, critical infrastructure that when I go around different parts of the country, everyone says it's just too difficult to get anything built. You know, we haven't had a water reservoir, for example, built in the last 30 years, and the water situation over the coming decades will become critical. So that's one aspect. Introducing a new nature recovery fund to ensure we can unlock and accelerate development and protect and improve the environment, and a more streamlined and modernised local planning system and strategic planning where councils are being forced to work together more sensibly about cross-boundary issues. So all that package of reform. On the Nature Recovery Fund, yes, absolutely, we do want to avoid bat tunnels. The bat tunnel is a symptom of a system that is failing to produce optimal outcomes, both in terms of development and in terms of nature recovery and restoration. And the problem with the bat tunnel is the system at the moment is geared up to very onerous, lengthy and costly site-by-site assessments and obligations, when really we can take a much more strategic view across a wider area. And through the bill, natural income will be put in place to develop what are called environmental delivery plans to ensure that, as I say, developers can pay into a fund, they can get going on development, but over a wider geographic area, we're getting more sensible outcomes. So not in the case of the bat tunnel, just protecting the animals in that particular location, but what can we do about the population of bats across a much wider area to restore and recover their population size.
Compulsory purchase reform, obviously making it easier for you to buy land, to put a railway down or whatever it might be. sounds sensible to lots of people. It's going to upset farmers, though, landowners?
We're not targeting farmers particularly, and actually I think the real potential of the CPO powers in the bill is in urban areas on previously developed brownfield land, where we know we've got to do more to unlock that land for development. But these reforms are a sensible evolution, radical in some ways, but an evolution of what has come before. We do need to do more to unlock land if we're going to get the homes and infrastructure we need. The previous government legislated to introduce powers on CPO to allow the disapplication of what's called hope value on schemes where there's a real public interest, high levels of affordable housing, health or education establishments. The bill goes further, makes that process more efficient, makes the administration less costly. And we do want local authorities, and it will be local authorities rather than ministers, to use these powers to bring forward appropriate sites, as I say, in particular, regeneration projects in urban areas.
I wanted to ask you about this quite extraordinary reply from a letter that the Justice Secretary sent to the head of the Sentencing Council. And the Sentencing Council's chair replied in relation to the Justice Secretary's concerns over a two-tier justice reform, saying, quote, "At no stage did the Lord Chancellor, the Justice Secretary's representative, express any concern or reservation about the term now under debate. The walkthrough of the guideline with officials from Ministry of Justice took place on Monday, the 3rd of March. Again, no concern was expressed about the relevant term." It's quite extraordinary, that, isn't it? Was the Justice Secretary asleep at the wheel?
No, and I think the Justice Secretary's made her views very clear. And the government's view is everyone is equal under the law. We don't want to see differential treatment for anyone, whatever their background. We've made clear we don't agree with this policy. And the Justice Secretary has asked the Sentencing Council to rethink and rescind the guidance. They've issued a reply late last night. The Justice Secretary will meet them later in the week to press her case again. But we've been very clear that we will take action through legislation if required. And we are going to review the role of the Sentencing Council alongside the role of ministers and Parliament in determining policy, because it is ministers that determine policy. And while we absolutely value and respect the independence of the judiciary, ministers have that obligation to set policy. And we've been very clear, Justice Secretary has been very clear on this occasion, we don't agree with this particular policy, which arose, as you will know, out of a consultation begun by the previous government.
It's correct. And coming back to the point about whether the department, the Justice Secretary's department, was asleep at the wheel, the letter also noted the guideline was discussed 15 times between July 2022 and January 2025. How was this not spotted?
I'm not going to speak for the individual civil servants who were in whatever particular meeting.
So you're blaming it on the civil servants?
Not blaming it on civil servants, but I think the Justice Secretary could not have been clearer about her view and the government's view.
We get that, but Robert Jenrick brought this to her attention. She wasn't aware of this until then.
Well, Robert Jenrick, if you
That's
correct
fine.
Me, correct me if I'm wrong, was a government minister at the time that
and I've held him to account about that, and I will
consultations.
hold the Conservatives to account about that. But you're blaming a civil service by implication.
I'm not blaming a civil service.
OK, so who's responsible for it?
I don't know who was in what meetings, is what I'm saying. But
But there's
telling your
15
viewers is
meetings and 15 sets of minutes where it can be referred to, of which 8 months' worth were whilst you're in government. Is it fair to say that you're asleep at the wheel, to not notice this until
I don't think it is fair. I'd say I don't know what meetings took place with what individuals were in the room, but the Justice Secretary could not have been clearer about her view and the government's position on this issue, and what we want the Sentencing Council to do in terms of rethinking and rescinding that guidance, and the steps we are prepared to take if they don't think again.
Matthew Pennycook, great to see you this morning. Thanks
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.